The US tariffs are likely going to be modest on the exports in the agricultural sector. This is as SA is not in direct competition with the US production season. Now joining us is Paul Makube, senior agricultural economist from FNB Commercial. A very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you actually agree with that sentiment that the agricultural industry will be modestly hit or quite severely hit?
Good evening, and thanks for having me. Yeah, in terms of the severity of the situation, is actually, has to do with, individual, regions and company or exporting, companies in terms of farming, companies that are involved. But you could say moderate, given the fact that, some of the commodities, we are counter-cyclical to them. But I think what is also important is that if you look at the tariffs, our competitors also face, tariffs, although, to a less extent. I mean, if you look at the, Peru, Chile, they're facing about 10%. But if you look at, Brazil faces about 50%. If you look at Mexico as well, their neighbors is 35%. So obviously that has ramifications on the internal dynamics around, supply dynamics in the US in terms of the procuring the citrus into the US. So Australia, on the other hand, faces 10%. Although a distance away, at 30%, we are at a disadvantage at the moment in terms of the trade into the US. So what is positive is what is indicated that there is a possibility of not a blanket 30%, but look at it from a sectoral point of view, and that might bring some positivity into the whole situation.
Yeah, and as you're mentioning some of those markets that would be competing with South Africa, such as Chile and Peru as well, depending on whatever the proposal is that the South African government now puts forward to the US, would it even matter at all when we have competitive markets who are having lesser tariffs, which may seem more attractive to the US?
Now, obviously, I mean, I think perhaps to emphasize is that the loss of one market is not ideal. So although in a bigger scheme of things from an agricultural perspective, less than 5% goes to the US, it is still an important market in terms of if you look at the commodities that are involved in, and also niche markets that, for example, in the wine industry that are involved. So obviously, I think the South African situation would be to diversify more, and that has been the trajectory over the past few years to look at alternative markets. But I think the other thing is that if we look at the whole, tariff situation, is that everybody is, has been hit. I mean, you look at the Indians getting 25%, the Japanese getting, 20%, and that, and it's still fluid, because if you look at the situation, is that you don't know what next will come. It's not like a static situation where we know exactly the formula that is going to be involved. We heard about the situation where the BRICS countries might face additional tariffs. We heard about the situation with Russia, where possibility of 100% tariffs, and also the other countries that trade with Russia facing further tariffs. So there is a lot of uncertainty in the current environment. But I think what we see now is that they are open to negotiations, which will continue despite the fact that the tariffs are now kicking in, and it will depend as to how far we can negotiate favorable deal for South Africa. But I mean, the situation is still fluid. You don't know what else will come up as another method that brings the tariff forward.
And as we are in these uncertain times as well, considering the contribution that the agricultural sector does play into the GDP as well, 10% of South Africa's exports being of the agricultural sector to the US as well, The big fear as well being job cuts, job losses in the immediate in the agricultural sector. We've also heard the president saying that there will be a two-pronged approach, one that will be to negotiate hard with the United States and the other one to provide support for businesses as well. Looking at that second approach of providing that kind of support, does the South African government, do you think, have that kind of revenue, that kind of finance to be able to subsidize the kind of loss that will be felt?
Yeah, so this is there's a huge uncertainty as to the impact. As I've indicated about the ramifications of the tariffs to other countries and then trade flows in terms of volumes that may come out of out of our competitors, and whether it might land up in a situation where the U.S. consumer at the end of the day, have to absorb the tariff increases. But if you look at the support that should come from the agricultural sector, I think it has to be in the form of support to actually diversify the markets and actually expedite the diversification of the market, but also ensure that all those factors that we have been talking about around reducing costs to ensure that we are competitive are addressed. One is talking about infrastructure that supports exports. We have from the logistics perspective to ensure that the ports are functioning and so on. Those are non-monetary support that can be done to ensure that the costs are lessened, and the South African exporters are in a position to actually reach market quickly without incurring costs that makes them uncompetitive on various markets. And I think perhaps the other important thing when we talk diversification, I think the issue of the Chinese zero rating the tariffs for African countries. I think there's another dimension that is a positive aspect to the current situation that we're facing.
Well, thank you so much. And also just reminding us that ultimately it is the U.S. consumer who will have to absorb these tariffs as well. So thank you so much, Paul Makube, who is the senior agricultural economist from FNB Commercial.